All right, good evening, everybody. This is Steve with Real Progressives. As many of you know, I have a son with autism. He is a wonderful, wonderful kid. He has taught me patience. He's given me meaning for life. He's made me realize the little things and have focused my attention on being the best dad I can be. I've had to fight through things, not avoid things. It is the ultimate challenge that I've ever faced in my life. And from what I've heard from other parents and other people who have children with special needs, there's no greater blessing, and yet there is absolutely no more difficult challenge in the world than trying to balance life and treatment and work and employment and all the other facets that go into dealing with a child who is either nonverbal or has issues with sensory problems and is on the spectrum. Obviously, there's more than autism within the special needs world that we could talk about at length. But in particular, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about autism as it pertains to Ontario, where we see funding being cut. And it's remarkable. As I sit here in the United States, and every day I am pushed further to become an advocate for my own child. This is in between meetings at work. This is in between just doing laundry and cutting grass and other things that regular people just do and they just take for granted. The art of advocating for your child, your special needs child, is a full-time job in and of itself. And that's not including actually taking care of your special needs child. Folks, this is a true challenge, made even worse by neoliberal austerity. Folks, the services that people need are underfunded, they're underserviced, and quite frankly, they're understaffed. People that do take these jobs are underpaid, and it's all to the detriment of the children. But it's all in the furtherance of the belief system that we're broke, that we can't afford to take care of our children, that we can't take care of kids who have no shot at a decent life without the services, without the help, without the therapy, without the involvement, without bringing people into their daycares, into their schools, to help include them, to help educate people who are, tone deaf, uneducated, not used to people with special needs, and the stranglehold ignorance has over all of our ability to survive in this. Now, this particular parent in this story, and I'm going to read this story to you, breaks down a pretty sad state of affairs, and I want you to pay close attention to this. Now, this is in Ontario, Canada, and the Canadians are always given praise for having such great social policies, but as it were, the premier in Ontario is a right-wing neoliberal and has been doing things to really, really harm the social safety nets of that area. Let me go ahead and break this down for you. I am going to bring this up. And if you look here, this is from the Toronto CTV News. And I'm going to go ahead and read this to you. And I hope that this sits with you. I hope that you pay attention. For those of you who don't have children or who have neurotypical children that are not impacted or not on the spectrum, it's important that you understand what those parents that have children on the spectrum go through. But it's more important that you see the funding issues. And this is across the spectrum. This doesn't have to just be with special needs. This is all the programs that we need. But here's a very particularly ugly one that came too close to home for me to sit back and ignore. So anyway, this was published on Wednesday, June 19th. It says some parents are criticizing the Ontario government's changes to autism treatment funding, saying they either won't be able to afford treatment or their child will be unable to find a spot in the program. Faith Munoz, spends several days a week at Queen's Park speaking with as many members of provincial parliament as she can. Her son Jeremy has autism and also struggles with mental health issues. Munoz said that her son told her last year he wished he would die. "Those are very hard words no 6-year-old should be saying," said Munoz. Jeremy receives about 2 hours of therapy a week, but Munoz says the program will soon be phased out due to funding cuts at the treatment center. Munoz hasn't been able to find her son a spot anywhere. "They're all full," she said, "so even if I receive this $5,000 budget, there's nowhere for me to go." Instead of directly funding autism treatment centers, the progressive conservative government will be giving money directly to families, allowing them to choose their own treatment options. Neoliberalism. In May, the government also announced it would begin a new round of consultations after parents complained the original plan didn't take into account a child's needs, which may vary greatly. According to Social Services Minister Lisa McLeod, about 8,400 children had their therapy extended an additional 6 months in order to ensure an orderly transition into the new program and allow us time to develop a needs-based enhancement. Still, NDP MPP Monique Taylor said families have lost trust in the government's ability to deliver an effective autism plan. Families are feeling the brunt of the cuts, said Taylor. "We are losing staff across the province, and this will not create a program at the end of the day that families will have trust in and that families will be able to afford and rely on." Jonathan Lowen has 3 sons with autism, and each one has a different need. He told CTV News Toronto that he can barely afford therapy for one of his children. "If I took my entire before-tax salary and spent it paying for therapy, I could maybe help one of them, maybe 2, said Lowen. "But which kid am I leaving behind? It's a terrible decision to make." Speaking in Sudbury on Wednesday, Ontario Premier Doug Ford defended his government's autism plan. "We're putting more money into families with autism than any jurisdiction in North America, bar none. We're doubling it, and what boggles my mind is we're pouring money into autism. We're focused on it, listening to the experts, not a bunch of politicians, but listening to the experts. We're helping them, but they're protesting." Parents say they have yet to see that help. McLeod says checks have been mailed to over 1,000 families, but many may have not received any funding. Now let me tell you something. I want you to key in really, really hard on this right here. This little subject area right here. We're putting more money into families with autism than any jurisdiction in North America, bar none, he said. "We're doubling it, and what boggles my mind is we're pouring money into autism. We're focused on listening to the experts, not a bunch of politicians." Now, I want you to read this part now again. I want you to pay particularly close attention to this. They're all full. The real resources are all full. She said, "So even if you throw me a UBI, even if I receive this $5,000 budget, there's nowhere for me to go." In other words, the real resources have to be enhanced. The real infrastructure has to be in there. The program needs to be there. The UBI or the what? The voucher? The money? The Liberty Fund? The Victory Fund? The cash isn't giving them the service they need? Oh. How fucking tragic. How fucking tragic. How many of you all have heard people say, "I just want a UBI. Give me my $1,000 a month. It'll be magical"? How many people say, "Well, we don't want the government," whatever. And then they blame the government for us not having services? Well, it's not the government. It's neoliberals who push austerity, who push private solutions, who push, here's some money, now go find a service. Oh, there's no services? Oh, well, we gave you your UBI, your 5,000. At some point in time, these key things should stick in your mind. Now, for the people that are struggling, who are up till 3 and 4 in the morning and then having to get back up and go to work at 6 a.m., who get less than 2 hours sleep a night, who are at each other's throats and dying to get some sleep, like a POW, their eyes are sandpaper. They can't sleep. The people who are having to sneak away from work to take care of their autistic kid because there is no services to help out. Those moments right there, folks. All of these things are completely avoidable. And Canadians, shame on you. You guys should have known better. You guys have had services, and yet you got a neoliberal in there pumping money out to these people, and there aren't enough places. But you know what'll happen? Just like it happens everywhere neoliberalism is. As long as there's enough people that did get the services that vote, then everybody will just keep on going on. And the people left out, well, damn it, that's just the price of capitalism and neoliberalism, isn't it? This is the ACA on steroids. This is what happens when you have private solutions, even with government subsidies. There is not enough trained personnel. There are not enough centers. There are not enough openings. There is not enough services. The infrastructure is not there. Forget the $1,000 UBI, the $5,000 autism payout. Forget all that. It's not the cash they need. They need the fucking services. You put it in those terms, doesn't it make that UBI look like a pathetic, right-wing idiot idea? It sure does to me. Because you know what? You could give me $20,000 and it wouldn't be enough to afford all the services my son needs. It's pretty pathetic when you make people choose between keeping the lights on and taking care of an autistic child. I want you to think about that. I want you to look within and ask yourself if you ever called MMT a cult. If you did, smack your mouth, smack your face, punch your nose, cut your finger off, do something to remind you that you harmed a kid with autism. If you support candidates that want to reduce the deficit, reduce the national debt, punch yourself in the mouth for hurting that autistic kid. I want you to know how dramatic what you've done is. I want you to know the pain and suffering your belief system and your vote has caused. Children. Forget the adults. The adults are suffering mightily also, because not only do they have to bear the weight of knowing their child is not being taken care of, but they also have to deal with the outcome, all the fallout, and the guilt that goes through knowing that they can't possibly afford to lose their job and lose all the money and not have a house and not be able to buy food and not be able to do everything because some asshole thought it would be a wise idea to reduce the deficit or reduce the debt or pay down the debt. And not knowing anything about economics, they have condemned these children. They have condemned them. My son has waited over a year for what they call a TSS. His last BSC passed away at a very young age, sadly. He bonded with her, and it took months to find a replacement BSC. The TSS, he's been authorized to have it for over 14 months. And he hasn't had one single treatment, not one single interaction. I want you to think about what you've done by ignoring the economics. You've done. Don't look anywhere else. Forget everybody else. I want you to look in the mirror. I want you to consider what your belief system has done to these children. Your laziness of not learning the economics. Now, I'm trying to tell you it this way because it's not too late for you to save the next round of children that have been left behind or will be left behind. It's not too late for you to make a different decision, to change the way you think, not only about economics, but about the impact of your ideological views, your burn it down ideas. Leave these kids behind. And that's shameful, isn't it? I mean, that's damn near, like the kid said he wanted to die. I'd like to believe that the people that want to burn it down and harm these kids, maybe they would say, hey, I'll take their place, let me die. Because those kids deserve better than that. They're full of love. They're full of innocence. And they are fully dependent on people with a brain and a heart taking care of them. To be in a caring economy, to be in a caring world, if you can't care for your neighbors, at least look at the special needs children and realize that your sick, perverted, twisted, psychotic view of fiscal responsibility is murderous and lethal and unworthy of humanity. It's a crime worse, in my opinion, than just shooting someone. Because you have a far greater reach in terms of the people you kill, in terms of the people you hurt, in terms of the people that don't get the services they need to survive. Children with special needs shouldn't have to beg, borrow, and steal to get the services they need. It's inexcusable for anyone to be a fiscal conservative. It's inexcusable for anyone to make excuses for a fiscal conservative. It's inexcusable for anyone to want to reduce the deficit and ultimately condemn these kids to being completely dependent and having no chance of being able to tend to themselves. Parents, let me tell you, every autistic parent I know, myself included, maybe there was a time where I wanted to off myself or get something bad to happen just so I didn't have to deal with this shitty neoliberal world. Well, now I want to live forever because I'm terrified of what's going to happen. Should I leave this world early to my precious son in this shitty, uncaring world that wants to reduce the deficit, wants to reduce the national debt, doesn't know anything about economics and couldn't be bothered to learn? Most parents that have children with autism, aside from loving their kid beyond words, their number one goal is they want to live forever so that they can take care of that child. Because the people out there, they're not going to do it. Isn't that a shame? Isn't that a shame? I think it's disgusting. Fiscal conservatism is the most corrosive, vile, evil, sick, perverted belief system in the world. There is nothing more perverse than fiscal conservatism. It is evil personified, and it must be stamped out. There should be no more fiscal conservatism in the world. And those that champion it are an enemy of the people. Remember the kids and do something better. Help get funding for these programs. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. Have a good night.